As a consultant, I've worked for some of the larger ERP system manufacturer, software, things like that. I've done contracting with Progress in the past. So I've done a little bit of everything. As soon as I had kids, I wanted to get off the road, and I went to work for one of my customers, which was EATONS. My office is down in Ohio, which I never go to. Very, very rarely, maybe once or twice a year. So I work from home, which is a great thing. And even right now, currently we have 95 plants running under our Progress platform. We are consolidating more and more of these plants into larger databases. Our large database is, I think it's like 464 gigs or something like that. So when I talk large databases, that's where I'm at, just under 500 gigs. I know there's some terabyte databases out there and things like that, but right now we're having issues with 500 gig database. I hate to see what's going to happen with the terabyte database, which we'll be heading to here soon. We'll get more and more things put together. Anybody over the 500 gig database? Where are you guys at now?
1.2, 1.3, just on this side, and the other side of the house is about the same size as the front.
Transactional data or history data?
Yes.
Both? All stored in one database? Or is that?
Right now, yes.
You guys need to break that crap.
Well, we're working on it.
The hell's the matter with you? But all that. Okay, but so large databases, you know, you have many issues with them. Maintenance issues, things like that. There's problems all over the board. Replication does, with a 1 terabyte database, it's going to suck to set up. It'll be horrible to set up. But once it gets going, it's beautiful. So what is replication? There's two parts of replication. One part is for disaster recovery, hardware failure, things like that. You'll be able to flip a switch, get right back up and running to the last committed transaction. So any in-flight transactions will be lost. Last committed transaction will be there. You'll be able to fire your users up, get right back up and running. The other side of it, on the data side, is data corruption. If your production database gets corrupted, it's going to stay there. It's not going to corrupt. 99.9% of the time, it will not corrupt your replicated database. Now that doesn't mean if somebody goes in and says delete all invoices for customer 600 and runs that in the 4GL or AVL, it's going to replicate that over and delete my replicated database too. But if you actually get physical data corruption, byte corruption in your data, that's not going to get transmitted over to your replicated database. Pros and cons, replicated. What version are you guys on here? 11.3. Boy, you guys are lunch for lunch. Wow. So, Progress just pulls your pants down and says, here, go 11.3. Wow.
It's been a rough road getting to 11.3.
That's stuff. Replication came out. Right now it's pretty stable on 10.1. We're running it on 10.1c. We are looking to go to 11.4 actually.
Yes, we were also
11.3 is 11.2 and 3. I view those like version 7 of Progress. Stay the hell away from it as quick as possible. They had issues. 11.4 so far looks like it's going to be halfway decent. Replication's not cheap. If you go with OE replication, there's a cost for the product. You can do poor man style replication, which will get you partly there, but it's not going to be great. There is a learning curve to replication, and there's a setup. The setup is painful, very painful, time consuming. We'll get to that. So here's a little bit of what replication does. So as your clients come into your source database, and replication is going to make you understand what a source and a target is. So your source database is your production environment. So as you change data, you write AI notes. Those AI notes get now transmitted over to your target databases. You can have 1 or 2 target databases. The reason why you can have 2, you can have them on separate servers around the world. So you have your belt and suspenders on disaster recovery. You can have, as we do at Eaton, you can have one as your replicated database and one opened up as a read-only database. So you can put in all your ODBC connections, your SQL connections on a replicated database on a different server and not affect the performance at all on production. Now, if you want to open it up for, if you do any .NET or Java programming that does queries, you could have that also on your read-only database. You have two new agents running, a replicated server agent and a replicated agent on the target side. Different types of failover, this is what we're talking about with the corrupted data, with partial failover. Out of the box replicate environment is you set these two things up on this would be one server, this would be another server. So they would match. All the environment would match, all the disk would match, all the memory would match, all the start parameters would match. Server A goes down, your production server A goes down, you transition server B into production mode, and all your clients would connect to server B. That's out of the box. So anything that your AI nodes would get applied, all that good stuff, would be back up and running. So if you do poor man style replication, you can do a similar thing than what they do here with replication. But instead of paying thousands of dollars, you lose your second target database, your read-only database, and you just apply your AI nodes every 15 minutes. And that would give you a 15-minute window that you may lose at any given time. Or you can change it to every 5 minutes and give you a 5-minute window that you lose at any time. You're still moving your AI nodes over, applying them to a replicated database, and you'd be in sync for up to that period of time. But you're writing all that code. And you're going to support that. But you're not paying a couple, $20,000 for replication. At Eaton, we decided that it was best for us to buy the replicated software, just because once you get it set up, it works. It's nice.
It's pretty quick.
Having the two target databases was a big thing for us. Having the read-only database for us was what got us to buy the software. By us being able to push our reports over there and our SQL connections over there to get it off of the production database. That was huge. Okay, so best solution, 2 servers configured the same. This is the out-of-the-box, most expensive solution. I don't know what you guys are doing here if you have them set up this way. We have 2 separate servers in sync. We keep everything in sync, that kind of stuff. So 2 servers versus 1 server. If you only have 1 server running and replication running, you're helping yourself for hardware failure only on disk. You separate them out on disk, but not hardware failure on motherboard and that kind of stuff. You only have one kernel to tune, that kind of stuff. It can be done. It's not the best solution in the world. The out-of-the-box failover. This is how you guys are set today. 2 separate servers, synced up. So you'll like to see how we do it at Eaton. It might change it probably. Here's the Eaton version of failover. We have our production server and our failover server. Our failover server contains other things other than just the replicated database. It also contains our test databases too. If production goes down, if that hardware goes down, physical hardware, if we lose the HP system itself, everything will fail over together.
Have you tested that?
Yes.
And what does it take to come back?
To fail back. Fail back's much easier than fail over. And if the physical hardware goes down, we keep all our stuff in sync. We have many directories that need to be in sync, software directories, that kind of stuff, progress, that kind of stuff. We keep those in sync. We have our databases are connected through a BCV volume, which is a business continuity volume. So the databases have another set of disks sitting down here, kind of like a warm mode.
Are they in the same room, or do you have them in different cities? Or?
We actually have those in two different data centers, one in Louisville, Kentucky, and one in Simpsonville, Kentucky.
I don't know, are those long ways away?
I think they're like
20 miles.
20 miles apart.
So the same hurricane or tornado could take them out, but
Hopefully they did their homework because we just built $60 million data centers each.
They don't get hurricanes there, tornadoes don't normally last 20 miles.
Oh.
You're right.
but it's not in San Francisco and
No.
New York.
So right now that was without replication. That's what we had right there. The failover, we fail over to another server. We try to bring our databases back. The problem is it didn't help us on the data side. If we lost our database, if we had corruption of the data, that kind of stuff, we were SOL. So that's what brought replication. So now we don't always have to fail over hardware. We might just have to fail over the database itself. And our view is if we're going to pay for replication, we should always have replication run. Now we're using our targets as production. Our targets, if we're having reporting going off of one of our target databases in a replicated mode, that's now production database.
And are you running all the 50 plants off of that one database?
No.
You have different?
We have over 400 databases running around. So we have 48 environments today.
Are they all running out of that same data center?
Yes. We actually have split in half. So half of production runs out of Simpsonville, half of the production runs out of Louisville. And you fail over to the opposite data center in the So at any given time, we're only failing. If we lose a whole data center, we're only failing over half of our environment. Because the other half will be running production from the other data center. So in our world here, if our database goes down for some reason or we find corruption within our database, we're not going to send our users over to our replicated database at all. We're going to shut down, we're going to snap off our replicated database and copy it, and we're going to repopulate our production database. We're going to transition that back to a production database and start it back up in replicated mode, and production is going to be back running with production, replicated database, and reporting database running.
What is your downtime in this?
As long as the snap and the recovery takes. So depending on the size of it, depending on the size of the data, it could take up to 4 hours. Because if you different technology of the snap on the disk, depending on your disk, if you're using EMC, BCV volumes, it's going to take you 4 hours.
Does that mean you can't send out a truck for 4 hours? You can't confirm an ASM?
You got it. Now, if you use HP Snap, the snap and the merge is going to be probably on a 500 gig database. It took us, the snap was immediate. It was like 3 minutes for the snap, but the merge, re-merge the disk in, was like 90 minutes. And we were back up and running in 90 minutes. So that was an hour and a half. And that seemed reasonable. And that, I mean, that's a disaster. I mean, that's if your database crashes and you can't recover. Now, it would probably take us more than 90 minutes to say, let's fail over. By the time we
So
get,
there are times it takes longer to make the decision.
yeah,
It's a,
because you got to go in there and find out
Okay,
what's
but-
wrong.
Why does that
Some-
sound so familiar?
Is it familiar?
No, I
Someone make a decision.
I mean, up to our biggest concern, and what I found with other companies that I've talked to, the biggest concern is losing transactions, not losing man hours. It's the man hours that it would take to re-enter those transactions in. So by being able to come back within a 4-hour window and get back to the exact point that you were at, that was more critical than the actual physical time that it took.
That's a hell of a lot more cost effective than losing man hours.
So that's probably been the biggest thing. If you're more worried about the actual uptime, you're best to, if you fail over, transition that database to production and swinging all the users over using an alias on the hosting.
This is what
But then you're going to lose. And when you swing that over, you are now vulnerable because you don't have a replicated database now.
we are.
Well, in Lenny's case.
Yeah.
So we're passing that off.
I have an idea.
In Lenny's case, with the pharmacy system, we have to do that. It's, okay, get the system back up.
Right.
At all costs. And you're right, you do have a period there that the last time it happened, you're sweating.
Yeah.
Because you know if something happens during that period, you are going to be down for
2 hours.
2 hours, 4 hours, something like
And
that.
if you're down, if you don't have a replicated database run, and something happens, now you're restoring to the backup and applying AI.
Yeah.
With a 1 terabyte database, oh, you're down for a while. Oh, yeah, we're talking hours, not 4, multiples of
That would be about 8, wouldn't it?
Yeah. If I had to restore a database and apply 12 hours worth of AI, you're going to be down for a while.
You're going to be down for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially it depends on how you're doing your backups. If you're doing a disk backup or progress backup. So we have progress backup on 500 gig database. It takes forever. I mean, just to restore that backup took us 3 hours. That's why it's
So would a solution be then to replicate it twice and have 2 replicated databases? So if one went down, you know,
That's kind of what we're doing. We're doing a hardware replication, disk-wise, which is like your mirroring, your disk mirroring, and then we also have replication. So if something happens to production, we restore off of the disk mirror and reset up replication. This way our users are not affected by having to go to a different location. They're always connected in the same place. And we're always having our production replicated and reporting database in sync at all times.
So you're mirroring all the time?
All the time.
Not taking a big
You're still going down each night for 6 minutes to split those mirrors, right?
Right now we're doing our backups right now are off the mirrors. And we do a pro quiet split the mirrors, enable pro quiets, and we're talking 4 minutes.
Yeah,
4 minutes call.
we do the profiles for backup.
Yeah.
We don't keep the mirrors together. It's just there's a performance hit.
I mean, we don't see much of a performance hit on with those mirrors there and off. Now we're running EMC,
We've got
so
these.
you can run BCBs. So we're running the BCB technology, EMCs. And as long as our BCBs are in the same data center, there's no performance hit. It's when you're going across data centers, that's where you get that performance hit. That's what we have that on the majority of our apartments. That's our 3rd mirror, which is across town, 20 miles. That is a performance hit. But it allows us to always have our true environment in place. So we'll never be in a case where we don't have replication. We're always going to have production replication and reporting database.
Except for the 4 hours or however long it takes to build.
Right. Now, if we can get our snaps to go quicker, then we'll come up with that. So now that I've pushed that off as a deviation, that's a hardware issue. Get your hardware to work better. So in a disaster happens, we actually lose a server. We're down to 1 server because we lost the data center. Flood came through, hurricane came through. We're going to have production and the targets sitting on 1 server, and we're going to take a performance hit there. But we're going to be up and running.
And that's not unwieldy. I mean, it's measurable, but it's not
Right.
huge.
you hope that you're not going to be doing it for very long. So if you have to limp along in that mode, you limp along, your performance takes a hit, but you're still knowing that you're secure enough to where you have production and replication.
You have to schedule an outage to transition back.
Well, your outage is actually moving your disk back.
Okay.
So that's your outage.
In this scenario. Okay.
So you wouldn't have to transition the database or anything like that in replication. You physically would have to pick it up. So, and whether if you're swinging disk, you're swinging that those disks from one server A to server B, your outage is going to be very, very limited by swinging those disks. You unmount the disk, you mount them up over here. It's not a big deal. You're probably down 20 minutes.
Schedule that at 3 in the morning and no one knows.
You have very small outage at that. If you have to make a progress copy and try to reset replication, and you have to do a progress copy and restore, it's going to take you 2 days, at least 2 days, to get replication back in sync. So that's the setup part. That's horrible. So once we go through it one time, we never want to do it again. We went through the mode of we want to do this every month. We'll do a physical backup, restore it, resync replication. Progress got us down that road a few years ago. After we did it one time, I said, you guys got it. They have no clue. They've never been out in the field and worked with any large databases.
They actually wanted you to pull back up and full restore.
Yeah, every month.
No.
Every month.
In fact, even when we set up replication, we did pull back up and restore. We did the snapshot and quiet point. And it still takes a while with a terabyte and a half, but yeah,
It's not pretty. I mean, yeah.
and that's
Well,
it's actually, you mentioned about learning curve. I think that's the worst part of the documentation.
There is no better.
It goes through telling you, we'll pull back up and pull restore. No, I don't have that option.
Right.
It's not even,
And most of those folks over there in Bedford, they're not working with 100 gig and plus databases. They're working with 30 gig databases. And you know what? I can do a progress backup and restore a 30 gig database, and the outage split is not that big. So, like I said, when I started talking to them about this, we brought them in and I started showing them. And I said, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong in the last 20 years. What's the command am I missing on the pro backup? And they ran it, and when it took 18 hours to run progress backup on the database, they're like, something's wrong. it's your command that's wrong. So hopefully, I think in 11.4 we should be able to back up by tenant too. Multi-tenancy. So you can split your data, do your backups separately.
So what I'm hearing here is that it's not just OE replication, it's also hardware and disks.
yes, there's things you can do, like the EMC SAN, if you're willing to throw enough money at it, that are pretty slick actually.
Yeah.
When we first brought the SAN up, the SAN did everything. It's getting to the point now we have multiple SANs for different applications, and you never know if we could get to the day where MCS has its own SAN, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then you can do some of these things like he's talking about here, because you can do snapshots, you can keep the mirrors together, you can do, you can't really do some of those right now.
The snap software, not if you stay away from the DCB stuff, because DCB stuff basically allows you to have a heartbeat. So it keeps that much the same.
But you're saying that Merlin's on the same thing.
No, you guys have your own SAN.
Okay.
We're separating you off.
It's just since you've been here.
Just since you've been here. No,
Yeah.
because technically you guys are a separate company, so most of your hardware is actually separate.
So if you're running the EMC SANs, you have the SNAP technology available. And that is just like in the old days when you used to split off the mirror and merge a mirror. It's actually snaps faster. So the new technology is faster. So you can snap off a copy of it, merge it back in on another side of the disk, and you get to go. Which would probably be a lot easier to get to reset replication. Because if you don't, if you shut down and you have to copy that data over, that takes forever too. So we even tried to use rsync data over, profile database, take a snapshot, set it here, rsync it over, and
That's what I did to get it going.
that took forever too.
So
And plus it killed the network.
Yes, if you don't have a separate network link or something to do that, you can actually kill the network out of that. We do use our sync quite a bit for syncing databases around, but we've gotten it down to the science. So
We have actually a utility built where we have a config file for what we call file sync. And in that config file, we put all our directories that we need to be synced up twice a day. And Cron wakes up and says, okay, run file sync. It reads a control table out there and syncs up anything in that control table over to two different servers. That way we can keep any of our failover servers in sync at any time. Port code over, things like that, and we can sync. And we first run it in report mode, so we run rsync in report mode only, and then we rsync it over. So this way we know if we're deleting stuff, somebody comes back and says, oh, I'm missing all these stuff. We can say, oh yeah, we deleted that.
yes, we've had that happen. We had happened with one of our DR servers. We were syncing out to it, and the mount points weren't set on source. It merely went away, went along, and just wiped that server
Delete,
out.
delete.
Oh yeah,
Delete, delete. And it was very fast.
oh yeah. It was probably the fastest that you ever knew when you're trying to type it in, trying to stop it. Well, the other thing is if you don't have mount points over here, it'll put it in the root mount point, and then blow your root mount point
Yes.
to bring the whole server. I don't know. Never done that. The poor man style is moving AI files over. It's only as good as you are if you want to code it that way. The size you guys are, no way you didn't want to attempt this.
We're using OE replication. Continue using
And unless you have smaller project databases out there that you don't want to pay OE replication on, then you can set this up. Other than on your big boys, yeah. For the smaller companies out there that are probably 300 gig and below, and can deal with some 15-minute window of transactions being lost, poor man style is a great way. You just gotta remember how much data can you use. That's the big thing. How much? What's your return? You know, if you can lose entry points, then you can go with this style and not spend so much money. You can spend your money on trying to refine this style. Source side setup, you guys already done this to set up the replication side. Do an online backup of the source. Again, this is straight from Progress to do it. We do not do the online backup. We just had to prove to our Unix folks that why we don't do an online backup when it took 18 hours to do the backup. Because in Oracle, you can do an online backup. But they do it by, which is kind of now on table partitions. What they were just talking about earlier was partitions. Oracle, you can do it by partition. So if we're only going to back up a 500 gig database and only back up 10 gig of it for this partition, yeah, it goes nice and quick. The Progress Online backup is what it is. So we don't use it very much. We try to use it in the replication mode, trying to back up the replicated database. We love to back that up so we can restore it anywhere, test, development, that kind of stuff, any name. It's unusable. And your guys' size, really unusable. You guys are going to do the same thing we're doing. You restore the database, change all the names, change the structure file, and do a DB repair. Back up. Target side, the DSR util is a big command to learn. That's probably the biggest learning curve of replication is the DSR util command. Learning what's in the monitor, what kind of information it can give you, what's it going to tell you when you're running, and knowing what your AI files are. What does the AI file lock mean? What is it busy? That kind of thing. Because when something happens, you're kind of, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning, database is halted, we don't know what's going on. And right away you think it's replication. So you go in there and you find out all the AI files are locked. Okay, replication's down for some reason. It was a network blow, or the agent went down for some reason, didn't restart. So that's probably the biggest thing. You get a lot of information in the log file. We've created some parsing of the log file to pull out some of this information. So when we do have outages and we do have questions, I got a lot of things on the menu option now. So push a button and it kicks out all the information on that log file. So I don't have to sort through a 3 gig text file trying to find a couple messages in the middle of the night. Worst thing I like doing is being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, which happens too often. There is where you can progress restore it and then transition it. We don't do that either. So we do the disk copy and transition it that way. On your smaller databases, you guys can restore and transition at the same time. And it would probably save you a little time. But if you guys are doing the disk copy, it's probably the best way to do it for your sizes. The biggest thing is we have shutdowns and everything. We have a look in our log file for this message here. And that tells us everything's okay. I can go back to sleep now. If I don't get that message, I'm waiting around for 10, 15 minutes waiting for that message to pop. Okay. And it's also something that I can send out to the higher ups saying, okay, here's why I'm going back to that. Systems tell me
How many 2 gig extents do you have for you?
7. And they're not 2 gig. We run variable extent AMs. We've lost no performance whatsoever between fixed and variable extent.
Say that louder, please.
There is no performance gain or loss with fixed or variable length extents on the AI file. On the database, it's different, completely different again. So, and on the beyond. AI file, we did extensive testing and we found no difference whatsoever. Interesting. But we run seven extents, that's it. So every 15 minutes, we have AI management running and rolls those extents every 15 minutes to the next extent. Which means if your replication goes down, it's going to lock, when you roll it, it's going to lock that extent. It's going to go to the next one. 15 minutes later, it's going to lock that. So you have 7 of them. And after the 7th one gets locked, it'll never get locked because it can't roll. But then you're getting messages in your log file saying that it can't do it, can't do it, can't do it. Which is not good, which has happened to us. Different properties, server properties. We have our, do you guys have your transition set up for manual or automatic? Manual. We tried automatic. It was crazy. It seemed like it had a mind of its own.
We've had other systems where it had that same option, and we had automatic. We had things like all of a sudden everyone's emails really slow. Oh, Exchange is running out of Illinois.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like what you said, automatic. And a lot of times it was a slight network.
Yeah. You get a network blip and it takes off and starts transitioning. It's like, what's going on?
Well, the nice thing is it'll do it automatically, but the bad thing is it'll do it automatically.
And we went back to none of our failovers. We don't have our hardware failovers set up as automatic. So why should we have this? But we actually played with it and proved to point out that we didn't. We went back to manual. The timeout was the biggest one, and the connection timeout failure right here. Those are the biggest ones, especially when you're setting it up, on how long it takes you to set up before it connects back to production, back to your source, and what that time is. We had to mess with that and crank that up because we were actually shutting source down, performing a backup, bringing it back online. So back in the olden days, which was 3 months ago, every night we'd shut down our production database. So we'd shut down production, taking everybody off, shut down, split our split our disk mirrors off, and restart production back up, which was great for the DBAs. Because every night we got to add extents, do database maintenance, that kind of stuff. Every night we had an outage. Well, your connection timeout, if there was a longer outage window, your connection timeout would fail and replication would shut down. So we had to crank this up to say, keep looking longer and wait for it to come back up. We're back in the mode now where we're 24/7 with production with ProPro. So we have a 4-hour or 4-minute window now of halting write activity. So, which is not good because our extent add online doesn't work either. So in 10.1c, if you do an add online extents, and somebody has an open transaction in that extent, in that storage area, it fails.
Ugh.
It has to be an open transaction. If there's nobody in that storage area, it works beautiful.
I couldn't get by without adding extents. That's
Exactly, that's where we're at now.
it's
So, which is helping because we're going to get pushed to version 11. So this is one of those things that allows us to. But it took us a long time to figure out what was going on because I had on extents all day long. They were beautiful, and then all of a sudden one doesn't work, and it doesn't give you any information other than it failed. So it took a long time for us to track it. The other thing is, if you have performance, have you tested out your performance on how long it takes to sync up your databases? If you shut replication down for 15 minutes and then start your target back up, and how long it actually takes to sync back up?
Unfortunately, I am familiar with how long it takes. It's pretty fast.
Yes, and it can get faster.
Really?
If they open up more of the ports, it goes faster.
Where's the point of diminishing return?
Exactly. Let me know.
It's in there.
It's in there. I think out of the box, I think this was set to like 10 listing ports or something like
I think that's what we're doing now by default, right?
that. We have some that are set to 1,000, some that are set to 500. The larger databases, we set them up higher, and so they can have multi.
As opposed to 10, you're thinking, a couple hundred,
Yeah.
500.
And it actually increased performance tremendously. Between that and your AI file size.
When you're trying to get sync back up, does that affect performance at that point?
No, not in production. No, and that's the wonderful thing with this, is you can test a lot of this stuff out by just shutting down your agent on your target. Shut your replication agent on your target down, and production's going to run. Production knows that it can't replicate, and it's going to keep locking those AI files until the agent comes back. You start your agent back up 15 minutes later and say, okay, now I'm going to wait for that message in the log file to tell me things are set, or watch the monitor. Yes, I will.
How are you tuning your writer to accommodate the faster speed? If you had that.
Now, I don't want to mess with that. So with the monitor, it tells you if it's normal processing, things like that. I have a script that goes out and runs this monitor every day and reports back to me to look for abnormal things. One of the things I check is to make sure the type is always manual. And again, I don't know how many databases you guys have in production requirement. We have over 400 databases. So
You don't want to.
I don't want to do anything manually. I am not typing in these damn commands on 400 databases because I'm completely cross-eyed. So I've scripted a lot of this stuff to go out to all our servers, go ahead, run the command, collect the data, come in, filter it out, do some checks. If something fails to check, email. If it doesn't fail to check, I never want to hear about it. In normal processing. If it doesn't say in normal processing, something's wrong. let me know.
You just run a cron job and it sends you an email?
Actually, we have this for 3 of our plants right now running 3 times a day. That checks this.
So you're parsing the output of the DSR.
Throw in a text file, parse it out, do a couple reps, find something, just let me know.
Doing that now with our app server is the same thing. All right.
App servers know if an app server went down there, which is great.
We're running
Running along. Best thing you do is just bounce it. It's an app server. Oh. Okay, so this is on the, I think this is the target side, the one. If you run this monitor on the target side, it's going to tell you where it's connected to for the source. Our biggest thing is knowing this name here, is that host changes all the time. So if it doesn't have that proper name in there, it's not good. So it lets us know about that. Again, it goes out there and runs this. If you don't run anything to run the monitor, you're not going to take a performance hit, run that monitor. And if you set up your filtering properly, you may only see this once a year.
I've actually been running against the VSTs for this information. ABL.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? I mean,
It's the same data, absolutely. But you're running ABL code. So you're starting a session up and pulling that ABL code out, which is using resources.
you live in there.
This doesn't use resources. Because the VSTs are still there. The only difference is this actually doesn't start on this client session up. It comes in through the back door through this utility. So there are some resources, depending on how close you are on your resources. The nice thing here is that I'm going to know something's wrong before anybody tells me something's wrong. So the one thing I don't want to hear is my customers, which are my users, telling me something's wrong with the system. So that's why I do all these scripts and checks. I usually be able to send an email out to the higher ups and tell them, we got problems. And then 15 minutes later, the users start complaining that there's a problem. And the higher ups are all, yeah, we understand we got a problem, we're taking care of it. They already know what it is. By that time, it's usually fixed. I don't mind having problems as long as I know them first. And most managers, that's all they want to know. They don't want to be told of a problem by the users. On the target side, you got the agents waiting for nothing, which is nice. You can change your TCP package to increase some of your speed. We played around with that a little bit. You do have an issue on the Unix side because you got the same package on the Unix side for your TCP port. The activity information where how many blocks are being processed, active process. Tells you how active. You could actually snapshot this off a couple times a day to find out where your high activity is, or watch your AI files. The larger size AI files, you're going to have more activity. But that's the cumulative from the last time your database was backed up. So do you guys cycle through your AI files now? You know there's a limit on the number of AI file cycles you can have. And it doesn't tell you until you try to restore from it.
Are you talking about the 65K thing, Ben?
On the number?
Yeah.
Yep.
That has been fixed.
In 11.4.
I think it's prior to that, but I gotta go take a look and see.
Because we were just asking about 11.3 and they weren't sure if it was fixed in 11.3.
I think you're right. I think it was fixed. I know what you're talking. We use knowledge-based entry about that. I thought that was fixed. We're going 11 for
As you roll your AI files, they get automatically numbered. As you're rolling through it, that number, once it gets past a certain number, 64,
65535.
there you go. It'll keep rolling. It'll keep numbering. But you'll never be able to restore after that number. And you don't know until you try to restore. It comes out to like 9 months, or a 9-month period of cycling every 15 minutes. And that's your limit. So at some point you gotta do a backup and reset the rate.
code is just marked back up?
Mark back.
Okay, that'll actually reset the number?
Yeah.
Well, we do that when
You just send it out.
we, well, don't we do it during the backups? Don't we do a mark? We could,
You could.
yeah. That would be the way to.
Yep.
Think
And the thing is, if you mark backed up, you gotta remember, once you mark that back up, that's your restore point. Because that's where you're actually pulling it. If you ever have to go back to disk, back to the old backup, and start applying AI files, that's your restore point. So again, I cycle through these and look for certain information. Very rarely will I ever get a report from this. But when I do, I know replication's down and nobody else in the company knows replication's down. The majority of the time, it's back up and running before anybody knows.
How often does that happen?